And I was younger, and they wouldn't let me play cards with them. I was bad. So when they wouldn't let me play, I kicked out 2 of her basement windows, stomped her flowers. Before I got home, I got in trouble once, twice, and when my parents got home, I got it 3 and 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Thanks for tuning in to the next Conversations with Brett. I really appreciate your support. If you can like and subscribe, that way you'll never miss an episode. Because you definitely don't want to miss this episode with Miss Kyna Jackson. What's up, Kyna?
Not too much. How you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
What you been up to?
Just working and, doing my community work and trying to travel when I can.
Okay.
That's it.
So what community work you doing? Because I know we grew up together in Cincinnati, Kennedy Heights, and I know your parents were very involved. Yes. What are you doing now that they will look at you and be like, okay, we see you?
Yep. So I'm a board member with the HDDC, the Historical District Development Corporation, which is where my salon is, and that is the Martin Luther King Historical District area. So I'm a board member and just trying to make sure we maintain the historical, facts and that the stories keep getting told. And we're trying to make sure there's affordable housing in the area, which we all know is going away in the old Fourth Ward. Not a whole bunch of affordable housing there, but we're trying to make sure there's some there.
Right. I tell people, I don't know how people, apartments, what they're paying for apartments. I had a friend, she had a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. She was paying as much as what we're paying for this house. And I'm like, you're paying how much? For what?
Yes.
I don't see how people are doing it.
It's not under I don't think there's anything under 2,000 in that area, which is ridiculous. And that may be for a 1-bedroom.
Yeah. I'll be living with you. I will be living with you.
So trying to make sure that there's still some affordable housing in the area is kind of the main focus of the HDDC right now.
I always tell people, I feel like I'm the last year, 1964 is the last year of baby boomers. Mm-hmm. I feel like we dropped the ball, meaning my dad, mentioned on a previous episode with Sid Kennedy, my dad was one of the first people to help start the NAACP in Maysville, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And I think about how our parents moved us to Kennedy Heights. We grew up in Avondale, moved to Kennedy Heights, So we were doing pretty good, but then I think my generation, we dropped the ball. We didn't keep some of the stories alive, and we didn't keep some of the messages alive. And I think it really hurt those generations behind us. What's your take on that?
I feel the same way. And I'm right after the baby boomers. I'm 66. So that's,
okay.
What am I, Generation G? Oh, I don't even know.
Yeah.
But we're the latchkey kids.
Okay, the latchkey kids.
We're the latchkey kids. And I feel the same way. We were just kind of more into ourselves.
Yeah.
I grew up, obviously, with a mom who was community-based, right, and licking envelopes, sending out information at the Kennedy Heights Community Center up there on Kennedy Avenue. And we did all of that. My mom was constantly involved. But, on the other hand, I didn't really get into more community-based work until I didn't have my community anymore. And I was missing that. And then I moved here. It's like, what do y'all do as a community? Are there some block parties? What do you do?
Right.
We had block parties. We, all of that we had growing up. Daniel Drake Park.
Yeah.
My dad was playing in the bands at the park. And, we had all of that. And it was like, we don't have any of this. How do you make this happen?
Well, and it
has to be intentional.
Oh, definitely.
It has to be intentional.
I think about Artistic Apparel, bookstore in Swifton, mm-hmm. Black-owned bookstore. Mm-hmm. When everybody was, Juneteenth, we had Juneteenth in Daniel Drake Park for years before it became anything. And so we always talk, when I talk to people, and I'm quite sure like you, when you talk about community, you think about Kennedy Heights. And shout out to Wendy Ellis. If you hadn't seen her documentary, America's Truth, Cincinnati, I would highly recommend watching that. I'll put a link in this episode. But when you think about Kennedy Heights from Ken Seal, the guys may have played sports, the sisters cheered, the dads coached, the moms were
the
mom.
that.
Oh, were you?
I was a little cadet.
Okay. So, yeah, so
We were the little marching drill team.
oh yeah, the drill team, yes. And you think about the Glamour Girls, the girls softball team.
That's right. And Glamour Girls was the salon that sponsored them.
Yes. Redwood that would always provide the drinks and stuff after. So when you think of that sense of community, it baffles me. My wife always tell me, she said, you must be the mayor of the street, because anywhere I move, I make sure I know all my neighbors, because that's how we grew up, right? Knew everybody on the street.
Everybody. And you couldn't get in trouble around the corner because somebody else's parents was disciplining you.
Oh,
I remember walking down the street. It was a beautiful day. It was like what they call an Indian summer, and which is a warm day in the winter. And I was outside without my coat on. And Mrs. Jackson at the bottom of the street was getting off the bus, walking down the street. And she said, Kyna, go in the house and put your coat on. And she stood there until I went in the house and she saw me come back out with the coat on.
Oh, yeah.
And then she proceeded to walk home.
Now, what would have happened if you told her, like these kids today, hey, who you talking to?
Oh, my goodness. No. I wouldn't even imagine. I couldn't imagine doing anything.
We like doing an interview right now.
No. I would have gotten in trouble from her, then my mother, then my dad, and everybody else. It would have been just an ongoing thing. No, we did not disrespect other people's parents, our own parents, let alone somebody else's.
I remember once there was a family lived up the street from us. We grew up on the corner of Red Bank and Standish, and I was younger, and they wouldn't let me play cards with them. I was bad. So when they wouldn't let me play, I kicked out 2 of her basement windows, stomped her flowers. Before I got home, I got in trouble once, twice, and when my parents got home, I got it 3 and 4.
Yep.
4 times. Now, and I hate to say that we kind of lost some things, that sense of community, but there was a generation where it was, don't talk to my kid, don't tell my kid nothing. Mm-hmm. And now you got a generation that has had a generation, can't nobody tell them nothing. The police can't tell them nothing, the teachers can't tell them nothing, the elders couldn't tell them nothing, and it's so sad because we were really raised to hold reverence and respect for our elders. And now they will run over you, an elder, and think nothing of it.
And it's just unheard of. And the way we grew up, it was so unheard of. But that also made us feel safe.
Oh, definitely.
Like I could walk from Lumford up to my mother's office, which was on Kennedy and Montgomery, by myself at the age of 8 or 9 years old, with no fear. Because I'm passing at least 10 to 12 homes of people I know. If anything, if a dog chased me, I'll go to so-and-so's door or, anything. Mm-hmm. And I felt safe all the way because we did have that sense of community. That's what allowed you to be a little bit more free, to walk down to Redwood. Oh, yeah. To walk. I mean, we used to ride bikes all over the place when Sean and Patrice moved down on Edgeview.
Right.
Because they originally lived on Lumford, on the corner. And then they moved down to Edgeview. I'd just ride my bike down to Edgeview. It was no big deal. And nowadays, kids can't do that.
They can't even play outside their own front door. And I think about, how when they first built the pool at Kennedy.
Yes.
We stayed at Kennedy from the time the pool opened until dark. And you walked home and there was no issues. There was no problem. And I think, and I keep going back to that sense of community, we have lost the sense of community. Because if anybody moved into the neighborhood, it wasn't like you see on TV, you take them a pie, but you knew who your neighbors were. You helped them out. I mentioned maybe in a previous episode, I was talking to somebody, I was talking to 2 young ladies there, millennials, and I talked about rent parties. And they're like, what's a rent party? I said, if you couldn't pay your rent, the community threw a cookout, get together. They brought you food, they brought money, and they helped you pay your rent. We don't even want to give nobody a bottle of water or anything now.
Right. And it is sad. It is sad. And when you mentioned the pool, I remember we had lessons in the morning, and then we had free swim.
Yep.
We had competition, swim competition.
That's right.
The football court, the football playing field, the baseball diamond, all of that right there. And all the people that came out of it. Barry Larkin, you know, you just think
Mark Brooks.
Yes, and all of us just grew up in this wonderful place. And our parents, I remember at my dad's funeral, and Moses Williams came.
Okay.
And he was just telling me all these old stories. And my dad would tell me he was a coach on Kids. I said, Daddy, what you coach? My dad was a musician. I was like, you coach? And he was like, yeah, I coached them when they were little. Because all the fathers just got together and created these teams. And then we had our pool. We had, I mean, you think about just like the great exercise, and healthy competition. You know, healthy competition and everybody nurturing each other. We all, and our teachers, our doctors, our dentists, all lived in the same community. Like, I was asking somebody, what was our dentist that lived down on?
It wouldn't have been
Dr. Newberg.
Of Newberg, yeah.
Yes, Dr. Newberg. Everybody went to Dr. Newberg. Yeah. You know, and Stevie Newberg, he was my age, his son. So it was like everybody was my dad was the postman. You know, well, everybody worked for the post. It's really,
My mom worked there, Mr. Davis worked there, Mr. Williams worked there.
So it was, you know, it was good knowing who you were surrounded with. And it was so, and speaking of Juneteenth, I'm going back a little bit. Speaking of Juneteenth, my dad is from Texas.
Oh, is he?
So my parents met at Tennessee State, and then they moved to Dallas. And that's where my mom learned about the Juneteenth.
Oh, wow.
When my mom came to Cincinnati, she started Juneteenth at Daniel Drake Park.
Really? I never knew who did it, because with us living on Red Bank, you know, that was a couple of blocks down the street.
Right. So, you know, that we would have the big celebration with Daniel Drake, and they brought in the band, my dad.
Yeah.
They would do the big band and do all the music, and they'd have on the dashiki.
Yes.
Yes. So my mom was like, oh, we're doing Juneteenth.
That's awesome.
Daniel Drake Park. And then we would have the block parties at the bottom of the street.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were, you know, Schroeder was at the bottom of the street, and then we had the park, Kennedy Park, right next to it.
Yes.
I thought that was my park. Everybody doesn't have a park at the end of their street.
Right. And that is a huge part.
Huge part. So we had the swings, we had the cookouts. I mean, we did block parties every year.
I don't know if you know, but because where we're from, you have Kennedy Heights, Silverton, Pleasant Ridge, 3 communities that are pretty close. We used to have football games, Kennedy Heights versus Silverton, Kennedy Heights versus Pleasant Ridge, just pickup football games outside of Kinsale and everything. And then when we used to all go skating,
yes,
everybody had their little community shirts. Yes. And it was fun rivalry. It wasn't like territorial, but it was all fun because we all grew up together.
Right.
And we so miss that in today's society.
We too. I wonder, how do you get it back?
Well, I think it starts with conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
The way you raise your son, the way we raise our kids to be community-minded. Mm-hmm. But when you said something, it took me back to a question I love asking people. And I probably already know your answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Did integration help us or hurt us?
Ooh. Oof. Goodness gracious. It's kind of hard to say, especially coming from Kennedy Heights, because, you know, a lot of like the Cunninghams, Dickersons, my mom, the Jacksons, they integrated. Kennedy Heights was a majority white neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
So they were the first Black families to start moving in, and it didn't harm us. We grew up in Kennedy Heights Elementary was integrated at that time. You look at our class pictures, I mean, we were in integrated schools. Right. So I had never lived in a segregated neighborhood. Now, when I hear my dad speak of it,
right,
because that's a different generation where he grew up in completely segregated neighborhoods, and he said desegregation harmed a lot of Black businesses. And because where they were, you know, Blacks only went to Black businesses because they had to, right? Those businesses kind of lost, you know, most of their income because of desegregation. But so I think generationally it may change, the impact changes.
Right.
So,
And I like that perspective because in my mindset, being a last year baby boomers, I didn't realize that I dealt with some segregation when we used to go visit my grandmother in Kentucky. I just thought we always went to the side window because that's where we went. We always sat in the balcony, but it wasn't until later I was talking to my sister Kim, and she was like, we couldn't go in the front door. We couldn't go to the front of the ice cream place. You had to go to the side. And sometimes I think it hurt us when I look at it globally because now everybody's talking about Black Wall Street. We've known about Black Wall Street for years at other places, and it's like we had our own everything, and we were growing, but then it was all taken away. And to me, it's almost like when you take something from somebody that makes them self-sufficient and dependent on you, now you control how high they can go.
Right.
And so in that aspect, I look at it like maybe it hurt us because we were doing just fine, and who knows where we would have been at this point.
Right.
But now here, however many years later, we're still kind of struggling as a people.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that bothers me the most is we don't respect one another.
Right.
One thing I used to love about Malcolm X, two of his quotes I used to really love. One is, we can't worry about their house until we clean up ours.
That's right.
The other one was, and it's a little off topic, but it speaks to the larger picture. The news will have the innocent looking guilty and the guilty looking innocent. And when you think about that, I don't watch the news. I'm just not a news watcher, and I have people, they watch the 6 o'clock in the morning, the 7 o'clock, the 10 o'clock. It's too much. I got other things to fill my mind with than this person robbed this person do that. And I mean, it's important to know the news, but I just can't fill my day up with it.
I was looking for one story this past week here in Atlanta. I was looking for one particular story on WSB, and I was rolling down, and I was in the shop when I was looking. I said, first of all, I never found the story I was looking for. I said, this is depressing.
It is.
One tragic story after another. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, close my iPad. It's too much. It's too much. And it is. And it's like they have to put something feel good in there. Because not everything going on in the world is tragic.
Right.
But we're getting tragedy constantly. I mean, just constantly. So it affects the mind. It affects how we carry ourselves in the world. I know it affects me. I'm like, well, it's getting dark outside. I'm going home. I never used to be like that.
Never. We'd be outside playing 10, 11 o'clock, running around the neighborhood.
Exactly. We were allowed to stay outside. Now, the one thing, when the lights came on, street lights came on, we had to be on Lumford.
Yeah, you had to be outside the house.
Right. We had to be out, but we didn't have to be inside the house. We just had to be on Lumford. And usually we were all sitting on Mrs. Cunningham's porch. Yeah. But I mean, but we could stay out there safely. And now it's like, I don't even want to be outside at night. Yeah. And it's, that's taken away from our quality of life.
Oh, it really has.
And we have to change it. We have to find that sense of community that we grew up in. And even like when I told you I was just in Cincinnati and being in that old community, I just got so comfortable. It was like a sense of comfort being at Kennedy Heights. I was like, now, first of all, I'm in Mrs. Patterson's house that her daughter now lives in, who is renovated and is beautiful. And I'm like, wow. And I remember being at the Cunninghams, Mrs. Cunningham's, maybe about 10 years ago. And I was sitting there in her living room, and I looked across the street, and our home was for sale.
Did you think about it?
I sure did. I sure did. And I went online. I looked it up. I went and looked on the sign, looked it up online on my phone, got to see the inside, my phone. And I was like, wow, I would love to have that house. I could easily move back to that community. Easily.
It's not the same.
It's not,
but it could be.
It really could be. I think the people made it what it was, and the people aren't there anymore. As Mrs. Cunningham would say, she said she talks to everybody that used to live there, and she was like, yeah, I just feel everybody's spirits are still here, like we never left, but we're gone, and I don't even know if they have a community council anymore.
I think they do. I think Rhonda McQuarrie may be a little bit involved. I think I've seen her post some things.
Okay.
But even when you think about that, excuse me, remember Teen Council? They had Teen Council that we can do. And you think about that was grooming us for future leadership.
Yes.
In the community.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
kids nowadays know what a Teen Council is.
Do you remember the YES program, the summer youth program that came out of the Kennedy Heights Community Council?
Yeah.
And got jobs. Most people worked at Kings Island or, had the summer jobs. It was a program to get us working, to get money in our pockets and, and get a work ethic.
Right.
I think you had to be 15.
I think 14. Yeah, you would be 14.
Yeah. And I mean, it was intentional to teach us work ethic, to teach us, how to save money and to be involved, like just being involved in politics. The Kennedy House Community Council was used to, we didn't have emails and all of that. We used to lick those stamps. I was probably 7 years old doing that stuff. We might have been breaking child like laws.
Say somebody will use it back.
Right, like envelopes and everything went out through the mail. And that's how they got information out on anything, whether it be infrastructure or mostly it was making sure that there were leaders, that they were getting leaders involved in the city. So it was just, everybody was involved.
Yeah. I tell you, one of my fondest memories of living in Kennedy Heights was Mr. Foster. Yes. Mr. Foster owned his own store. Mr. Foster would educate you on Black history. He would not let you disrespect yourself or no one else. And he was one of those men in the community that everybody respected. And like you said, I think part of the lack of community is fathers. Because you think about all the fathers, like we said, that coached, that worked in the community, that did all this in the community. Now you don't even have fathers interacting in their kids' life, whether they're at home, away, or whatever. And I think it's a certain validation that a young man gets and that a female gets from seeing their father involved in the community, involved in their life, treating their wife right, just being a pillar of the community. And it's like, it's almost non-existent anymore. I'm quite sure there are some.
Oh, yeah, there are some.
But when you grew up in Kennedy Heights and you see almost every man,
I mean, they were present. Even my father, being a musician and having a whole studio in our basement. The Callaways.
Oh, yeah, Reggie, Vincent, Mel
would come to my dad. Can we use your equipment? Right? Because Dad had it, and he was like, yeah, if you're serious, you can. And then getting involved with Woodrock.
Oh, yeah.
My brother Sam was in Woodrock.
Right.
And starting musicians and, who came out of our neighborhood? Bootsy Collins. And Callaways.
And that starred some of them were spread throughout Cincinnati. Keith Robinson, his younger brother Kevin.
Right.
Doing music.
And they're all the children of the Jaspers. Jasper Isley.
Ronald Isley. Ronald Isley.
The Isley brothers. We love the Isley brothers.
And think about that. When you think about Cincinnati, and we talk about Kennedy Heights, but when you expand out in Cincinnati, arts, entertainment, sports, activism, because what Nikki Giovanni?
Lincoln Heights.
Yeah. So all these people that came out of this area in Ohio.
Yes. Yeah, just arts, entertainment, just solid. I mean, it was just solid. I remember my dad having, he was having a session. They were doing a recording session in the basement. And, I'm like probably 7 or 8 years old. And I think it was the drummer from the Spinners.
Okay.
Was there. And it's like, why are all these people outside? Everybody knew this guy was in our basement recording.
Oh, wow.
So everybody's like, they're outside. I'm like, oh, why are all these people out here? Because they play music down here all the time.
Right.
That was normal for us to have, somebody there practicing or whatever for their next gig. They did it a lot in our basement. So it was awesome. And to be able to go around the community, and on Sundays or Saturdays, we were always in a park at some, my dad was playing somewhere.
Yeah.
And that was our weekends, our summers. I miss it. But, one of the things that I love here in Atlanta is the Jazz Festival at Piedmont Park.
Okay.
That takes me back. It's obviously on a much larger scale, but it takes me back to Danville Drake Park.
Okay.
I can sit there and just like go to another period of my life when I was a little girl.
Okay.
And my dad was on stage. I don't know, something about that jazz festival here at Piedmont Park, it just gives me this warm, fuzzy feeling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so as we wrap up, we've heard you mention salon a couple of times. We would be remiss if we didn't mention J. Miles Salon.
J. Miles Salon. We are in year 18. Just completed 18 years in business. And
Edgewood area?
Edgewood area, Old Fourth Ward, and still standing.
That's awesome. So what is it about doing hair because you've been doing hair for
32 years.
32 years.
32 years. It's my artistic outlet.
Right.
It's my artistic outlet, and you make people feel good. And we have a strong, my little salon has a very strong sense of community.
Okay.
The people that come in there, it's a lot of networking that goes on in there, and just a peaceful place and a lot of good music.
You taking on any new clients?
Yes, I am. Always. Always.
So make sure we put a link to J. Miles Salon if you're looking to get your hair done and get good conversation.
Yes, get good conversation, nice hairstyle, and www.jmilesalon.com.
You got it. Well, Kyna, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Brent. Always.
Anything I can do to assist or help, please let me know.
And same here.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Conversations with Brent. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thank you.